Hi everyone, and welcome back to our Devoted Cleric video guide series. Today we are going to address the armor and weapon enchantment issue. I'm not going to cover just buff because I don't want to do 2 or 3 times the same video, so let's just get into it. The first enchantment I'm going to talk about are armor enchantment, because this is actually the simplest one to talk about. There are not many good armor enchantments, and I'm not going to mention them, these are useless. So the first weapon armor enchantment I want to talk about is Elven Battle. Elven Battle is actually a quite good enchantment, as like I've said before, stamina is your main survival tool, and at transcendent level it does increase actually your stamina regeneration, which means that you are going to actually be much more resilient in boss fights or in trash fight, where there's a lot of moving parts, and you are going to be able to dodge a lot more. However, the problem is that if you dodge more, you cast less, and your buffs uptime is going to drop dramatically. So don't do it lightly. It's not the best enchantment you should pick. There are some other options, it's not the only option, and keep in mind that your purpose as a cleric is not to dodge constantly, it's to be able to get the maximum uptime of your buff, and if you dodge, you are not going to be able to do that. So now let's take a look at the other option. The other option is actually Soulforge. Soulforge is actually an enchantment that lets you mess up your rotation. It has drawbacks too, because if you die, some of your buffs are going to be to disappear with your death, like Hallowed Ground. So it's not something you should be looking for to buff more. You shouldn't be looking to die, because it will also reset your empowerment status. So let's be careful when you play Dungeons. It's not an enchantment you want to proc, but it's useful because it lets you mess up ultimately, and that's not a bad thing, because, well, everyone does mistake, even the best player are going to die ultimately. So, well, it's an option you can consider. It is completely valid. Now, another option I want to talk about, and this is not something that is currently useful given the current state of the game, but it has some uses and it may be useful sometimes in the future. So, Negation. Negation is actually an excellent armor enchantment. It would be the best in slot enchantment if content was more difficult, which means about sustained damage and not big 300k hits or other silly thing like that. If it was about sustained damage, Negation would let you build more damage resistance, which means you would be taking a lot less damage overall. It would increase your damage resistance by 30%, which is enormous. It would be the best weapon enchantment we could use right now, but we can't, because there's no content that is challenging enough to require it, and there's no content that is designed around sustained damage, which is the absolutely most challenging kind of encounter you can have in this game. And well, there are technically some encounters designed like that, but they're extremely rare in the current group content, so it's not an enchantment you should be looking to acquire, but it's an enchantment you must absolutely know if one day there is, let's just say, difficult content, and if the devs realize that big hits are the way to make challenging content in the game. So now let's talk about weapon enchantment. This is a bit more complicated, as there are farmer options, there are good ones, bad ones, and broken ones. Let's start with the broken ones. Blackfire. Blackfire is actually, in theory, a 5% debuff to NPCs, but it's not a 5% debuff to NPCs. It's actually a 2-3% debuff at transcendent level, because, well, it's affected by damage resistance from NPCs, and it's affected multiple times, which means that you cannot negate the effect. So this enchantment does not actually work. It's not working as advertised. Maybe it's working as intended, I don't know, but currently it's not a good weapon enchantment. You should not pick that one. It's cheap on the auction house currently, and there's a reason, because it's bad. So don't use that unless you really have no other option, and well, you should not invest in that one if you didn't purchase a weapon enchantment yet, because it's bad, and it's probably not going to be fixed, because it's probably working as intended. So The next bad weapon enchantment is Terror. Terror faces the same issues. I don't know the exact mechanics, I'm not completely aware of them, but I know it's not a 4% debuff. It does not work as advertised either, so don't use that, it's the same problem. The next weapon enchantment we can talk about is one actually of the best debuff weapon enchantment, which is Dread enchantment, but Dread enchantment is actually another problem. Dread enchantment is going to be used by pretty much every single DPS class, except maybe, I don't know, DPS Paladin and Great Weapon Fighters, that's about it. Maybe some Trickster role rigged are also built around using Dread, maybe. But every single endgame DPS character is going to use that, so the debuff is going to be applied by this character and not yours, because it does not stack with itself. The debuff actually can only can be only applied once, and even if it's a great debuff, you're not going to be useful if you pick Dread, because, well, it's a great healing tool actually, but you are not going to be able to debuff with them. However, if you are looking to build a healing character, since we don't really have a good... Oh, come on. Since we don't really have a good healing dailies, except maybe Guardian of Face, but Guardian of Face is, like I've said, very situational. You're not going to rely on that to heal in group content, so you are going to rely on things like maybe Divine Glow, Bastion of Heals, maybe Healing Word, I don't know, but you are going to be able to, you are going to use encounters, you are going to use Astral Shield 2, but now the heal is not that great overall. If you are going for pure healing, it's not going to represent a lot of your healing. 5% lifetime, I've tried it, it's not a big deal. So you are going to increase the critical severity of your encounters, which is great because Bastion is going to crit for a lot more, and Divine Bastion is going to be able to completely refill a Guardian Fighter, maybe even more than that, or maybe close to Paladin level heals, 200k, something like that, with critical Divine mode Bastion, which is fantastic, honestly. So if you are looking to build a healing cleric, you are going to use Dread. Maybe Vorpal. Vorpal is actually a lesser option. It's still good, it's okay. It means that your dailies and at wills are going to increase crit severity too. That's okay. But it's a lesser option for clerics. You want Bastion to crit if you are healing, and if you want to debuff, well, the damage resistance debuff works. There's no doubt about it, I've tested it, it works. However, the problem is that many DPS characters are still running this enchantment, which means that the debuff, well, you are not going to be able to apply it in every single team, and if you're playing with different people, and if you play with Great Weapon Fighters, they are going to have a Transcendent Vorpal, and the debuff is going to be applied anyway, so we are going to have to look into other options, non-buggy options, maybe not the strongest one, but good ones. And the one I want to talk about, and the one I am going to recommend, is Bronzewood. Bronzewood, well, I have tested it, and it works. It does not exactly work as the tooltip says, because it's actually not a buff to ally characters. They're not going to do 5% more damage, but they're going to do 5% more damage to the targets which were affected by Bronzewood. Other than that, it works. There's no other major bug. It gives a 5% debuff, that's about it. Not more, not less. And the cooldowns are, well, it works as intended too, so there's nothing much to mention about. It will increase your damage a bit too if you're not capped in armor penetration, when you shouldn't be. But it's not really the main reason you should use it. It's actually a strong debuff, and it actually works well with our purpose of one rotation buff, which means 10-15 seconds, because it's actually the strongest debuff you are going to be able to use in that time frame. It's a 5%. It's actually stronger than Dread for if you are looking at fast skills, and since it's the purpose of the build I have mentioned before, the one rotation kill, ideally, you are going to be able to benefit from a stronger debuff. It's 1%, but it's still strong, and in other instances like trash fight, it's also going to be good because, well, you are going to also be able to apply it on pretty much on cooldown. You are going to maybe, yeah, once every 2 trash fight, something like that. Should be a good choice too, because trash dies pretty fast in this game anyway. So now let's talk about, I want to talk about also Fate Touch. Fate Touch is actually a fantastic weapon option. It's a good option, but it's not good within the current group content. It's pretty much like negation. If the game was challenging, Fate Touch would be best in slot for clerics, because we would be looking at a pretty strong indirect mitigation buff. Enemies would be dealing much less damage to tank and DPS player, and actually it's actually used in PvP because that's how it's works, and it would be ideal if we had to heal and if we had to debuff monsters so that they don't kill the team. If we had sustained damage, like I said, it would be the most challenging kind of encounter we could have, because it would actually completely if sustained damage was much stronger than lifesteal for DPS characters, that would be killed without mitigation, and that's one of the tools you should be looking at. Now let's talk about one of the useless weapon enchantment, because I want to address this topic, and there are some myths around the Frost enchantment. It's supposed to be the best debuff weapon enchantment, and well, no. It sucks. It's just bad. I've tested it. Maybe I'll pause the video later, and Frost actually works as intended. It does not stun bosses. I have tried. It doesn't disable bosses, and it respects control resistance on NPCs, which means that in tier 2 content it's useless, and in boss fights it's useless. So if you have one, well, I'm sorry for you, you have a completely useless weapon enchantment. You are going to be able to use it maybe in Valindra Storer, but I'm not sure that's your ultimate purpose. Well, anyway, so that's about it for armor and weapon enchantment, and thanks for watching.